can survive if I let you.
Cultivating nevermore.
Let the new era begin. The era of the ECW.
Oh my God!
This is extreme.
Greetings, ECW fans, and welcome to a special edition of Is Extreme. Now, I know that This Is Extreme has been on the show for a while now, but there will be actual episodes. I do have a couple interviews, primary podcast, Wrestling Nostalgia, that I will put out on this feed because they are ECW talents. But I did want to do this special episode today because this is May 11th, and we had just found out that wrestling legend, ECW legend, Sabu has passed away. And, it's heartbreaking, right? I mean, Sabu was one of the defining talents of ECW. I believe he was a game changer, a trend setter in professional wrestling, right? There's so many that came after him that emulated what he did. He was truly, one of a kind, ahead of the curve on things. Always did things his way. But if you hear all these people that always talk about the Mount Rushmores of this and that. If you're going to do a Mount Rushmore of ECW, it'd be hard pressed not to put Sabu on there, right? So we wanted to remember Sabu for his contributions to wrestling, and obviously his contributions to ECW. If you're an ECW fan and you listen to this podcast and have it still in your subscription, you obviously at least appreciate what Sabu brought to the game. As part of it, I am going to give you an interview that we did with Sabu for my Wrestling Nostalgia podcast a few years back. It's not that long an interview, 20-ish minutes or so. It is somewhat hard to hear because in Sabu fashion, while recording, he was walking around Las Vegas, where he's from, where he lived. So it is, he's out and about doing things. So it is kind of hard to understand and hear somewhat, but it's still fun to listen to. It is the interview is conducted by my co-host on that show, Ike Isaacs. So when you hear him introduce himself, that's who he is. So it's just a little chat with Sabu that I wanted to kind of re-release in this feed for you guys to help remember him now. So let's take a little break, and when we come back, we'll have that interview with Sabu.
Support This Is Extreme and buy the This Is Extreme shirt. Show the world that you are part of the revolution and that you support our podcast and the history of ECW. Go to tinyurl.com/ECWPodShirt and buy yours today.
This is extreme.
Hey, Bruiser buddies, I want you to listen to Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty. Every week, he has the roughest and toughest interviews in the podcast world today, with the best guests you could ask for. There's no bums on this show. Let Dave Dynasty be your podcasting tag team partner and listen to Wrestling Nostalgia while drinking beer, smoking cigars, and busting heads. Just look it up on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe today, because the Bruiser said so.
I'm your co-host, Ike Isaacs, and today we are joined by a very special guest. We are joined by none other than the homicidal, suicidal, genocidal, death-defying maniac, the legendary Sabu. Thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
No, absolutely. Anytime, of course. So we wanted to talk to you because you have a new book coming out by author Ken Casanova, and we can recommend it enough. It's called Sabu, Scars, Silence, and WHW Publishing. And we're going to focus on early in your career and your Uncle Sheik, but I urge everyone here that's listening to hear about Sabu and his career overall. But Sabu, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. When you were a kid, Sabu, what did you think when you saw your uncle, the Sheik, on TV wrestling?
Well, when I started out, he wanted me to be the best basic wrestler there was, So I only learned the very basics for the first few years. I didn't really learn any flying or anything elaborate. It was all basic hand-to-hand wrestling, arm rock, hand rock, stuff like that. Boring stuff that the best are, the guys who are the best, they're good at that stuff. But it's overlooked by a lot of young guys because they want to go to the flying stuff.
Yeah, and definitely in those early years, wrestling was a lot different than what you see nowadays, of course. So, like you said, it was good stuff. No, you're okay. But no, you said in your book that you wanted him to train you, but he wouldn't initially. What made him finally give in to train you?
Well, I wanted him to train me when I was a little kid, and he said, no, I had to learn how to wrestle first, which I didn't understand. So what he meant was I had to amateur wrestle first in high school, junior high and high school. So I did that, figuring out that's what he wanted. He didn't pinpoint saying that's what I want. He said, I wanted to learn how to wrestle first. So I learned how to wrestle first, then I came up to his house and I asked him to train me. He said, of course, you know. But not that easy. I had to keep going out to his house every day for a few weeks.
And that's an interesting concept. You need to learn how to wrestle first. So obviously you did. You got trained. But your training was very old school, right? You were taught respect and paying your dues.
Yeah, old school. Yeah, like back when I was training, a good wrestler was judged on how good he could think on his feet, not how good he could remember a spot. Now, if you can remember a spot, that's okay. If you can react on your feet, that was better. You know, like 90% of the matches, like their guidelines, but their ad-lib, you know, we had to put them together while they're out there. And the guys who could try to stay on their feet, were the ones who could say good.
And also during that time, you know, especially in those early years, the concept of kayfabe was very much relevant. Obviously nowadays that's a little bit different, but was that something that your uncle taught you, was, you know, kayfabe and respecting the business?
Well, yeah, see, I pointed out on a picture on Twitter the other day, someone said, it's a case SR Superfly, and they'd asked about it, and I've asked about it. I said, it wasn't up to me, it's up to the promoter to call you anything you want. I was just happy to wrestle. So when I got to the ring, I didn't know what my name was. They go, hey, somebody, look around, who are they talking about? Oh, me. I've done that many times, because it doesn't matter what my name is, I'm in the first match just to learn. And know my role. I only did first match stuff, you know, nothing out of the ring, and no chairs, no table, no blood, nothing like that, of course.
Like you said, it was definitely different back then too, but.
Yeah, that's old school training now. You practice your promos, your character, all this stuff before you even have a match, you know. All that stuff comes later. You develop it as you find out what kind of wrestler you are, and you kind of, you know, the style you favor more.
I like your statement there about how nowadays that they learn how to shoot a promo and their character before they even have a match. But
wrestling comes first. The bottom line is wrestling. If you're not good at wrestling, who cares about your promos? Then your promo will be your second backup, you know. So you're not good at wrestling, maybe you're good at promos. But first, you try to be good at wrestling, and then you progress, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely feel like that should be the way of thinking now, but certainly sometimes it isn't.
And I feel like I had guys their first match in a death match. I didn't have a death match for 10 years. I didn't know what a death match was, other than somebody in the main event who wanted to kill each other.
Also, early in your career, you debuted as Terry SR, and said you never asked the Sheik that what the initials meant. So, what do you think, or what do you hear that those initials stood for?
Well, I've heard it was Sheik's Revenge, and also Sheik's Relative, or Super. Yeah, he said one time it meant super race, that Arabs were a super race, like the Nazis were a super race, but they're wrong. They were wrong too. But that was the rumors. I only heard it from him that it's a super race, but he said it as a joke, so I didn't believe him. And anybody who asked him, he told them to mind their own business. Because in those days, those are forgotten about days. We didn't know about the, you know, that on Sheik's Revenge sounds pretty
But I like Sheik's Revenge. I think that one sounds pretty cool. So, but you were also, at one point, known as Terry Superfly Snuka, and you were billed as Jimmy Snuka's brother. How did that happen?
But that wasn't my choice. Believe me, that was put on me at the last minute. One day, my cousin Eddie, Sheik's son, which he didn't know about either, my uncle didn't, he goes, we have a special guest tonight, the brother of Jimmy Superfly Snuka. And the guy goes, here, all right. He goes, Terry, Superfly Snuka. I go, Terry, not this here, who's that? I look around, but he's pointing at me. So then I was pretty disappointed because I go, you call me something that, one of my idols without his approval, and I don't want to be called Superfly, But it was funny. He called me Terry Superfly Snuka, and I was the brother of Jimmy Snuka. And I go, well, where's he at? But I never approved of it. Like I said, you do what they tell you to do, and it don't work.
That's what I was going to say, kind of calling back to what you mentioned earlier. You just kind of go with it, like you said, because if you don't do it, you don't work. So obviously, since we're talking about your early career, later on, you had another professional wrestler by the name of Rob Van Dam, who your uncle also helped to train. Did you and him hit it off in the beginning?
Yes. He put out a friend of ours, a mutual friend named Samson. This guy Tom Bennett, he was a mutual friend of ours, and I thought, he's a good guy for me to beat up in practice. He introduced Rob to it, and I thought Rob would be a good punching bag for him, but he turned out to be more than that. I learned how to be back for it. So I learned a lot of shit from him, and he learned everything from me, and I learned a lot from him.
Definitely a good person to learn from as well, like you mentioned. But
so, when at the time when I was training these guys, I was 5 years in business, so I didn't really want to go back to step one again. I wanted to keep advances. So I tried to move Bob up as fast as I could, so we'd be at the close to the same level, so we'd bounce moves off each other instead of just Tim bouncing moves off me. It worked, when my uncle wasn't looking, we did a bunch of crazy stuff. Then when he was looking, right back to basics, so we were the best at the basics. In the meantime, I trained, practice train, I always start out with the basics, head lock, lock up, head lock, bar, all that stuff. I started with all that first, then I started doing whatever I'm going to do in practice.
So then also, part of your book as well was, you mentioned that when everyone started discovering that you were the Sheik's nephew, you decided to utilize that, and that's how the name Sabu came to be. But how did Sheik come up with that character of Sabu?
Well, Sabu, Sheik was a man of the actor Sabu in the Jungle Book. The actor in the Jungle Book was the character is called Mowgli, but the actor is called Sabu. In the 1920s, and my uncle grew up in the 1920s. So when he was a little kid, he used to put a towel on his head and run around that crazy like the Sabu the big guy did on the Jungle Book. And so when he got older, when he had a baby, he wanted to name his first kid Sabu, and my aunt wanted the dog Sabu. So Sabu was the dog. He was a white German Shepherd. And then I was second Sabu. So to me, it's a God-given name. It's not a name I chose. It's a name someone chose for me. So I like that name better than Terry. It sounds better. So I react to Sabu more than I react to Terry. Only because, not because I'm egotistical, it's because I consider it a God-given name. When someone says Sabu, it turns the light out of my head and I look around and say, who's calling me? If someone says Sabu, I rarely look around. I know they're not talking about me.
Absolutely. And also, Sabu's buried than Terry, Superfly Snuka, of course.
Right. But I was just trying to keep a job. I didn't care if they called me. I was shocked they did that, but I wasn't happy with it. But I was happy to have a match.
So you worked in, you've worked in, pretty much everywhere. But earlier in your career, you worked in Memphis and other areas, and ultimately wound up in Japan. And that's where you kind of stayed to develop and help you come into your own.
One time, one day, somebody called my uncle and said they were looking for him and somebody else for a world tag team tournament, a world frontier martial arts wrestling, FMW. And the tournament was karate versus wrestling, wrestling versus boxing, boxing versus judo, and so on. And so we were the wrestlers, whatever. So they told him to bring anybody he wanted. He goes, well, I'll bring my nephew. They go, it don't matter who he is, just bring him. So he brought me, and the week before I go out, I go, shoot, what do you want me to do different than I haven't already been doing? He goes, I want you to do that shit in the backyard. When you think I'm not watching, I want you to do it now. All the stuff I was doing behind his back, but I didn't think he's free, he was free. Now he says, no, I want you to do that stuff you think I can't see, do it in the ring now. So I did the best I could, and it got over, I could drop of the hat. the Japanese started naming all my moves. I didn't have no names for them. I never did them in matches, like Arabian Press and all that stuff. I never did that in a match before, but they said, what do you call that, Arabian Press? I said, Arabian Press.
Arabian Facebuster sounds just a little bit better.
Yeah, and everything was Arabian Facebuster, Arabian, Sabu, everything. The magazines named me, and the fans named it. I didn't name nothing myself. I just went with it. And it's probably better than what I came up with. Like Arabian Facebuster, that's the way gap of the chair. I would never thought of that. I was the way gap of the chair. Yeah, and it came out naturally. It wasn't like a plan. I got a blueprint for this move. I didn't. It came out of nowhere, and the fans named it out of nowhere. And it was the best name they couldn't name it. Actually, I just got off the road from we were in Chicago, I think. Yeah, Chicago for a pay-per-view party, and then we were somewhere else last night. The night before that. Anyway, with that, I got a horsey voice. Excuse me.
No, you're okay. No, I was just saying, the next thing I was kind of curious about, you've also said, and this is something that I've personally seen, like on our podcast, a lot of people talk about the Sheik. But when you hate it when people refer to your uncle as the original Sheik, as he is just the Sheik. Since you knew him on a different level than most, tell us what your uncle meant to you personally.
Well, I have to buy it because he was my uncle. He took care of me like although, it was, him and my mother were brother and sisters, so they were always close. But, him as a wrestler, I was the best. When I was little, I didn't think that he was cheating. I thought what he was doing was surviving. Because everybody thought was bigger than him. I was a giant, all his sons were giants, so he had to even it out by poking him in the eye, I guess. That's what I looked at it. I didn't look at it as him cheating. So, but I never wanted to pattern my style after that. I wanted to work at it, and work at a different style, and then poke him in the eye, And everybody now tells me I should wrestle like him because it would save my body. But I'm not going to copy him no cost if I don't have to. But I'll imitate him in my own way. I'm not going to just sit there and wrestle like him.
Right, and I feel like your style of wrestling is iconic. When people think of Sabu, they say, "Oh, this is what I think of," and they think of this iconic, super unique style of wrestling. So certainly, you could definitely come into your own with that. But I guess one other thing, we've talked a lot about your uncle and your early areas of your wrestling career. But in addition to that, we've already talked about this a little bit, but how much did he instill in you about protecting your character in the business?
Oh, yeah, well, I would just say it's type of character. It's the way I really am without having to hold back. Because I don't talk, I do all my actions, all my speaking, I do with my actions, and that's why I've always done my whole life. I wasn't a shit talker. I had a shit talker that you got me going, but then a punch me sometime before too many words, So I try to, my fabulous character is just me being me, because I'm naturally shy. I don't like to talk in public. Never say I couldn't talk, just refuse to talk. And if I have to speak in front of people, you have to pay me more. To me, that's work way harder than I know how to do it. I get a lot of respect to guys who can talk. I can't. I'm not one that can talk and believe what I'm saying if it's not the truth. And also when I was a kid, me and my mother was watching some wrestling, and everybody was yelling and screaming, "I'm a kid this guy, kid that guy." Everybody was the same. My mom goes, "You're going to do this, right?" I go, "Yeah." Wrestle. I was like 6 or 7 years old. I go, "Yeah." She promised me you'll never act like, never say a word. So I try to keep true to the promise, plus I'm shy.
Right. No, I understand. And I definitely feel like it works into your benefit a lot of the time, especially with your character. But that's a good little story. That's a good little story. Keeping the promise. That's right.
But some of those, being fed with the press, if it's just me, I don't talk much. Like I'm talking to you because you got real comfortable. Like the 5 minutes from now, I probably got cold feet, so I told you I wasn't here.
No, I understand. Well, I'm glad we got a hold of you then.
Right on, I'm glad you. But yeah, that book, we put a lot of history and a lot of stuff people didn't know about Detroit or about my uncle's history. His history is a little more fascinating than mine because it's harder to find. So some of his history in there I kind of cheated, but it's part of me, so that's why it's in there.
So actually, one last thing for you. I know we've talked quite a bit, just about your early career and your uncle. But one last thing we just want to ask you here at the Dave Dynasty Show is, since you guys are very close with your uncle, do you have maybe a story of the sheep that you can share? Maybe something that most haven't heard, any kind of like a funny story, anything like that?
Yeah, well, just one quick thing. Like we're sitting down Georgia, I-75, going south to Florida, and we get pulled over by this black cop. And that guy, the vice president so fast, whatever, and she goes, tell him who you are. I said, I'm Terry. He goes, not you. Tell him who you're driving. I go, oh, I'm driving the sheep. And he goes back in the back seat. He goes, beat your man. I go, yeah. And then the sheep comes like, wave to him. And he goes, you can't beat that cigarette. He goes, I bet you the fuck I can. He goes, all right. Got in his car and he gave us an escort off to the middle of Florida. Yeah, it was funny.
I just wanted to thank you again, and for everybody listening. Sabu's book is Sabu, Scar, Silence, and Superglue from WHOW Publishing. You can get your copy and lots of other cool stuff by going to sabuandsupergenie.com and ordering it directly from the man himself. But it's been a legitimate honor getting to talk to you, sir. You are, by all definitions, the legend of legends, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And we're really excited about your book. So really, we thank you for giving us some time just to talk to you. It's incredible. Thank you so much.
You got it, man. Thank you.
This is Listen to Their Screams, a horror podcast that feels like you're chatting with friends. Hello, I am one of your friends, Dave. I am one of the co-hosts of Listen to Their Screams with my friend Ike, and we want you to come and check us out. We are a fun-filled, positive horror movie podcast that does reviews, news, birthdays, anniversaries. We play games. We are a ton of fun every week for you, the horror fan out there. For all of our links to our social media and the podcast platforms, just check out our link tree. It is linktr.ee/listen2screams. That is listen, the number 2, and screams. Or look us up on your favorite social media platform and podcast provider.
Hey ho, everybody. Subscribe to the Pinhead Pod, the Ramones fan podcast, bringing you interviews, news, deep dives, and much more. Look it up on your favorite podcast platform. That is Pinhead Pod. Okay, and welcome back to This is Extreme. Again, I'm not going to say a whole lot here. Rest in peace, Sabu. We're remembering Sabu for who he was, what he contributed to wrestling, but particularly with this podcast, what he contributed to ECW. If you're listening to this, I thank you for still remaining a subscriber to the podcast. Like I said, there will be occasional episodes that will pop up. Interviews that I do for Wrestling Nostalgia that are ECW centric. I think I'm going to go ahead and release them on this feed as well to kind of hit those ECW fans that were subscribers of this podcast. So thank you for your support and your appreciation. You never know. This is Extreme might make a fuller comeback in the future. It's possible. I remain an ECW fan. Very much love it. So you never know what's going to happen in the future. So if you subscribe to the podcast wherever on your favorite platform, please continue to do so. Because like I said, at the very least, there will be the occasional episodes that pop up. So as always, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and always keep it extreme.